On today's 11 by 14 hardboard canvas, I'll be doing a lot of stenciling, painting paper, and using some homemade texture paste. So let's get started. I've got my small snowflake stencil out, and I'm just going to start putting them all over this piece of tissue paper. I'm not trying to be super careful about it. Just gonna put them all over, and I'm gonna twist and turn my stencil and keep putting them on till I get it covered. Not sure why, but I always use dark gray, almost always, for this kind of stuff. I just like it. It's just a little tiny bit softer than black, just not quite as harsh. Next, I'm taking a plain grocery bag and wadding it up, and I'm going to dip it into my dark gray paint, tap it off onto my piece of wax paper, because I don't want very much paint on there. I want just a little bit to put a nice little filler around my snowflakes, just to kind of bring them all together, to unify them, maybe is the way to say it. Once my paper is dry, I put some Mod Podge all over my hardboard canvas, wad up my tissue paper so I've got lots of nice crinkly texture, and then I'm going to gently place it down and push down, try to get all of the big bubbles out, but I'm not really worried about, I really want that nice texture there. I'll put a nice coat of Mod Podge over the whole thing, make sure she's really good and covered, and then I'll come in with a couple of baby wipes and I'll tap all over, just gently kissing the canvas to make sure that all my texture is the same and nice and even. Cutting off the overhang after my canvas is dry. With my canvas dry, I've got my large tree grove stencil lined up, and I'm using a large bath sponge wedge and my dark gray to pounce on my forest. I hold my stencil down really tight in the beginning because it really wants to move on me, but once I get going and get some paint on my canvas, then it kind of helps hold it and I don't have to hold down as tight. Now I'm touching up my stencil connections with a medium round brush. With that layer dry and my stencil dry, I'm going to line it back up, and then I'm going to put my large snowflake stencil on top of that. And I'll use my gunmetal gray to put those on to give it a nice little highlight. It won't be extremely obvious, but hopefully you'll like the effect like I do when it's done. I decide where I'm going to put, how many birds I'm going to use and what birds I'm going to put where. I've made up a dark red by using a little bit of bright red and a tiny little bit of my dark gray in there. And I'm going to use my liner brush and just go around the edges of all my birds to give them, just to finish them off. I've got my practice sheet out and I'm going through with my permanent marker and just deciding how I want to, where I want to put my eyes on my birds, where I want to, how I want to embellish them. Now I'll use my pen to start adding detail to each bird. And then I'll put out a little white onto my palette, mix up a lighter gray, and add a little more detail in with my liner brush. Once my birds are dry, it's time to decoupage them onto my canvas. They're a good thickness of cardstock, so I really want to press them down and make sure that they are going to stay. And then I will cover the whole canvas again and tap all over with my baby wipe. To make my snow, I'm just putting out a little bit of white paint and some of my texture powder. This particular one is called Rolletex. I bought it at Menards years ago, had it in my stash, but you could use sand or whatever you have on hand to make some texture in with your paint. And then I'll use my medium round brush to start applying my snow to my branches where I think the snow would fall and sit. And each section that I do, I will sprinkle some translucent glitter over the top of it to just add some shimmer. I mix up a little bit more of my snow and apply it to for the floor of my forest. Pile it up a little bit around the tree bases, as happens. And then I'll apply my glitter. With my texture paste dry, I tap on a little bit of Mod Podge on top of those spots so that it will seal them in for good. Hey, thanks for joining me today. If you enjoyed this video, it would be awesome if you would like, subscribe, and maybe even leave me a comment. Hope you'll join me next time.